David Ray Wilkerson, May 19, 1931, April 27, 2011, was an American Christian evangelist best known for his book Cross and the Switchblade. He was the founder of the addiction recovery program Teen Challenge and founding pastor of the non-denominational Times Square Church in New York of evangelical doctrine and practice, in which more than 100 nationalities were represented. Wilkerson's widely distributed sermons, such as A Call to Anguish, are known for being direct and frank against um, against apostasy and serious about making the commitment to obey Jesus' teachings. He emphasized such Christian beliefs as God's holiness and righteousness, God's love toward humans, and especially Christians' views of Jesus. Wilkerson tried to avoid categorizing Christians into distinct groups according to the denomination to which they belong. Wilkerson was killed in a car crash in Texas on April 27, 2011. Early years. David Wilkerson was born in 1932 in Indiana. He was the second son of a family of Pentecostal Christian preachers, and he was raised in Barnesboro, Pennsylvania, in a house full of Bibles. His paternal grandfather and his father, Kenneth, were ministers, and according to Wilkerson's own testimony, he was baptized with the Holy Spirit at the age of 8. The young Wilkerson began to preach when he was about 14. After high school, Wilkerson entered the Central Bible College in Springfield, Missouri. The school was affiliated with the Assemblies of God. In 1952, he was ordained as a ministry. In 1953, he married Gwen Wilkerson. He served as a pastor in small churches in Scottsdale and Phillipsburg in Pennsylvania until he saw a photograph in Life magazine in 1958 of 7 teenagers who were members of a gang in New York known as Egyptian Dragons. He later wrote that as he felt the Holy Spirit move him with compassion, he was drawn to go to New York in February 1958 in order to preach to them. On his arrival, Wilkerson went to court in which the teenagers were being prosecuted. He entered the room and asked the court judge for permission to tell them something, but the judge ejected him. Upon leaving, someone took a photo of Wilkerson, who was known at the moment as the Bible preacher, who had interrupted the gang trial. Soon after Wilkerson left the city, however, upon his return, his grandfather encouraged him to continue his evangelism. It was then that he began a street ministry to young drug addicts and gang members, which he continued into the 1960s. Later, in 1958, to achieve his purpose, he founded Teen Challenge, an evangelical Christian addiction recovery program in Brooklyn, affiliated with the Assemblies of God, with a network of Christian social and evangelizing work centers. Wilkerson gained national recognition after he co-authored the book The Cross and the Switchblade in 1963 with John and Elizabeth Sherrill about his street ministry. The book came a bestseller with over 50 million copies in over 30 languages and is included in Christianity Today's top 50 books that have shaped evangelicals. In the book, Wilkerson tells of the conversion of gang member Nicky Cruz, who later became an evangelist himself and wrote the autobiographical Run Baby Run. Nick had been the president of the gang Mau Maus, and he and his friend Israel Narvaez became Christians after hearing Wilkerson's preachings. And in 1970, The Cross and the Switchblade was turned into a Hollywood movie starring Pat Boone as Wilkerson, and Eric Strada as Cross. In 1967, Wilkerson began youth crusades and an evangelistic ministry aimed at teenagers whom Wilkerson called "goodniks", middle-class youth who were restless and bored. His goal was to prevent them from becoming heavily involved with drugs, alcohol, or violence. Through this ministry, the Cure Corps collegiate urban renewal effort was founded. In 1971, Wilkerson moved his ministry headquarters to Lindale, Texas. On September 22, he founded World Challenge, an organization whose mission is to promote and spread the gospel throughout the world. Wilkerson claimed that in 1986, while walking down 42nd Street in New York City at midnight, the Holy Spirit called him to return to New York City and to raise up a ministry in Times Square. He founded and became the pastor of Times Square Church, which opened its door in October 1987. The church first occupied rented auditoriums in Times Square, Town Hall, and the Nederlander Theater, later moving to the historic Mark Hellinger Theater, which the ministry purchased in 1989 and in which it has operated ever since. In relation to his denomination during the preaching, "You need the baptism of the Holy Spirit," Wilkerson said, "I'm not preaching some denominational doctrine. This church does not belong to any denomination. We are not Assemblies of God. We are not Baptist. We are not Methodist. We are not Catholic. We are just Holy Ghost people believing in this book, the Bible." Wilkerson did not preach in the name of any specific denomination. Instead, he focused on biblical preaching with the aim of encouraging people to seek God through a personal and deeper knowledge of Jesus Christ and the experience of the Holy Spirit. Throughout his ministry, Wilkerson would have contact with many other prominent Christian ministers, among which include Leonard Ravenhill, who was his friend, and Ray Comfort, whom Wilkerson met in 1992 after having been listening a message called "The Hell's Best Kept Secret." From the 1990s, Wilkerson focused his efforts to encourage pastors and their families throughout the world to renew their passion for Christ. Wilkerson and his wife, Gwen, moved to New York City at the inception of Times Square Church in 1987, and in 2006 began splitting their time between New York and Texas. They have 4 children and 11 grandchildren. Prophecies. Wilkerson received a vision in 1973 regarding the future of the United States, subsequently published in a book called The Vision. Some of the subject areas of this prophecy were worldwide recession caused by economic confusion, nature having labor pains, a flood of filth, and the baptism of dirt in America, rebellion in the home, and the persecution madness against truly spirit-filled Christians who love Jesus Christ. Death. On April 27, 2011, while driving east on U.S. Route 175 in Texas, Wilkerson crossed into the westbound lane and collided head-on with a tractor-trailer. He was pronounced dead on the scene. His wife, Gwen, was injured. Although Gwen survived the accident, she died July 5, 2012 from cancer. Bibliography. Wilkerson, David, Cheryl, John, and Elizabeth Cheryl. The Cross and the Switchblade. America's Last Call on the Brink of a Financial Holocaust, David Wilkerson Publications. Beyond the Cross and the Switchblade, Born Old, 1966, original title The Little People. David Wilkerson Exhorts the Church, 1991. David Wilkerson Speaks Out, 1973. Wilkerson, Dave, 2009. Dearly Beloved, David Wilkerson Publications. End Times, New Testament. Um, Get Your Hands Off My Throat, 1971. Wilkerson David, 1991. God's Plan to Protect His People in the Coming Depression. David Wilkerson Publications. Wilkerson David, 2001. Hallowed Be Thy Names. David Wilkerson Publications. Wilkerson's Dave, 1980. Have you felt like giving up lately? Hey Preach, You're Coming Through, 1968. Wilkerson David, 1992. Hungry for More of Jesus. David Wilkerson Publications. I'm Not Mad at God, 1967. I've Given Up on Parents, 1969. Jesus Christ, Solid Rock, The Return of Christ, 1973. Jesus Person Maturity Manual, Jesus Person Pocket Promise Book, 1972. The Jesus Walk, Selected Wise and How To's for a Closer Walk with Christ, a Regal Jesus Person Maturity Book, 1972. Life on the Edge of Time, Man, Have I Got Problems, 1969. My Bible Speaks to Me, Wilkerson David, 2000. The New Covenant Unveiled, David Wilkerson Publications. One Way to Where, 1972. Parents on Trial, 1967. Pocket Promise Book, 1972. Pocket Proverbs, 1983. Promises to Live By. Purple Violet Squish, 1969. Racing Toward Judgment, 1976. Rebel's Bible, 1970. Revival on Broadway, 1996. Rock Bottom Pamphlet, 1981. Set the Triumph, Set the Trumpet to My Mouth, 1985. Wilkerson David, 1978. Sipping Saints, David Wilkerson Publications. Suicide, 1978. This is Loving, 1972. Triumph Through Tragedy, Last Wilkerson, David Wilkerson Publications. Triumph Through Tragedy, Last equals Wilkerson. 12 Angels from Hell, 1965. The Untapped Generation with Don Wilkerson, 1971. Victory Over Sin and Self, 1980. Originally titled Two of Me. The Vision, 1973. What Every Teenager Should Know About Drugs, 1971. When I Doubt, Faith It, 1972. Okay, thank you for your patience until the next, and God bless you all. Have a nice time. David Ray Wilkerson, May 19, 1931, April 27, 2011, was an American Christian evangelist best known for his book Cross and the Switchblade. He was the founder of the addiction recovery program about making the commitment to obey Jesus' teachings. He emphasized such Christian beliefs as God's holiness and righteousness, God's love toward humans, and especially Christians' views of Jesus. Wilkerson tried to avoid categorizing Christian Teen Challenge and founding pastor of the non-denominational Times Square Church in New York of evangelical doctrine and practice, in which more than 100 nationalities were represented. Wilkerson widely distributed sermons, such as A Call to Anguish, are known for being direct and frank against um, against apostasy and serious